Do you ever feel like that you have the team is capable of following through and creating the results that you want on a consistent basis, but unless you're there pushing it, they're never actually following through and asking what's the next question and thinking about the totality of the process and getting to the result. From that first interaction with that prospect or the review with a client to the outside money that's coming in, to following up on the applications, to making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and the money is being moved and the client's being serviced, to the end, when everyone gets paid, everyone feels good. If you're not doing that, even though you're not doing specific tasks for the process, if you're not doing some of that, at least some of that, you feel like they're not stepping up and following through, right? It's pretty common to get to a place where advisors know, okay, I've got the big client, the big set of money that's coming in, the 5 million. I know where that is, right? Because you're on top of it, meaning like you're too much into it. But the other stuff that perhaps is not quite as big as that, I don't know where it is. I don't know whether the client's supposed to be following through right now, or I don't know whether my team's supposed to be doing something. I just don't know. That lack of clarity is what gets us. And so you might say with the team, I've seen them be really good. I've seen them create and complete tasks. They understand what they're doing. They understand the concept. They know why it's important. Overall, why can't they consistently follow through? And the challenge is not their capability, not their skill set, and even not their accountability. It is the fact that the decision-making still lies with you. So we want to think about not having them be accountable to the actions, but then them to have the overall decision to really be thinking about owning the process overall. And so oftentimes I see with the planners and advisors that their team is split in terms of their process. So you might have one person in the team that does applications or meeting prep, but you might have one person in the team that does meeting prep for one advisor, but does partial meeting prep for another. And that person that does the partial stuff might say, okay, I do the ABC, but someone else does the XYZ. It doesn't give them the level of ownership around delivering the entire thing, and therefore it's much easier for things to slip through. So I want to be thinking about, how do I make sure that they understand that decisions lie with them in the complete process, ownership of the process, not just accountability for doing the task as well. So we've really got to think about the overall operating model that you have for the team. This is a confusing thing oftentimes to think about roles versus people in the team. It serves well no matter the size of your business and your practice. Maybe it's just you, the one planner, and you've got 2 or 3 people in a team, maybe even one. It's still worth thinking about the roles that those people are playing. Oftentimes you hear people say, oh, like John does this, rather than this is the role and John does this role, or even part of that. Because in a small business, there's often many hats that we're wearing and many roles that people are doing overall. And so you got to think about, okay, like how am I splitting my business down and who has ownership for what overall function rather than the specificity of the task. So rather than hiring someone to say, okay, I want you to do these 10 things, you want to have them hire that person, say, you're in charge of new business applications and everything that goes into that. And that way we're starting from a position where they own the overall function rather than tasks within the function overall. And that allows us to move towards training. You still have to do training. They're not going to come in and be able to do a whole thing and know the whole thing straight away, but it creates delineation and understanding of who owns what overall. And that way, when we're designing roles, we're not just doing it based on tasks, because tasks could be many, many. In fact, if you can think about a system overall, oftentimes in business, we're talking about systems, we're talking about processes. A system is just like a collection of processes that all rolls together to get to a specific result. So if we can take those individual processes, and inside those processes, you've got individual tasks. So one process might have 10 tasks, might have 20 tasks. And together that process might be a collection of processes to be one particular function. Those functions add up to be the system overall as well. So depending on the size of the business overall, you might have functions, you might just say process is the system. Again, you can make it complicated if you want to, but you got to think about which in your team, what roles are they doing? They are not the role is the role. And think about what all tasks fit in that. And you want to think of it like an inclusion rather than an exclusion. Not, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that specific task. I own that whole function, so that task actually might be part of that, even if we didn't think about doing it before. It allows us to create a culture where people create ownership for outcomes rather than accountability for specific tasks. And so it's worth thinking about, okay, how do I set up the right cadence in my team for continued updates and success with how I'm setting up them? Okay, so this is what typically happens on a day-to-day basis, is that you work with your team and you speak to them all day long, or they speak to each other all day long. And they do that based on putting out fires and doing what must be done for client requests, mostly on the reactive front as well. And so there's detail as to whether that, and we can get to that another time, whether that is how you successfully set that up or not. That's for another video. But thinking about just how we make sure we communicate in a different way with our team. So you've got to create a distinct communication. I call it the cadence of communication, a rhythm in which you get into with your team, such that you have a space on a regular basis where you can know and they can know we're working on the bigger picture. We're zoomed out a little bit. We're not dealing with, oh, where did that thing go for that person? And did that person sign that thing for that transfer? Or what happened with the service center? Did you call a service center? Did they call a service center? Like, where are we? Are we waiting for them? And rather than doing that, we zoom out and say, okay, how did this week look for you? How do we know this week was a success for you? And when it comes down to it, you've got to make sure that individuals in the team know what a daily success looks like, and that starts to build it. But the fundamental piece is knowing each and every given week, when do I have the time to continue to make this better? It's working on your business, which is very trite, of course, but it's working on your business with the right people inside of your business. Not just zooming out and thinking working on my business means I've got to think about my strategy. That's important as well. Here we're talking about the practical application of how we continue to get better as a team with the right working cadence. So a good question to think about as you're trying to find these areas in your business right now. Instinctively, I'm sure you've got a place to go, but where does the motion stop without you? If you don't put yourself into a particular area, where does it stop? And that you might find will be a fantastic place to start.